I'm Mangino. Welcome to the Mangino Talks Pittsburgh podcast. We talk about everything that matters to us all, from current events to Pittsburgh history, social issues to sports, politics to practical day-to-day life. And it doesn't get a whole lot more practical than today's episode. We're talking about employment. Employers desperately seeking potential employees, and then workers that are looking to change jobs, find something better for themselves. Just truly remarkable numbers that are out right now. And there's a bit of a disconnect, isn't there? A lot of people left scratching their heads wondering, how is it possible that there are so many jobs that are listed that are going unfilled and you have unemployment as low as it is? Normally, if you have a lot of jobs being open and people looking for them, you think that unemployment would be high. Or if unemployment was really as low as it is, that the employers wouldn't be looking for people because the jobs would all be filled, right? Well, one of the things that clearly happened with COVID-19 was this great reshuffle, as it's described, where people began the process of looking for something different, looking for something better. Remote work playing a major role in this. The idea of individuals going back into offices full time, it's something that many Americans just do not want to do any longer. And we're experiencing this with downtown Pittsburgh, people just not wanting to go back to work as they did before. Many of them working some aspect of a hybrid job where they'll go down 2-3 days a week, maybe 4. But some of the work is being done remotely, and they want to be able to continue to do that. But this issue is not just what's happened with COVID. This is something that has been projected for quite some time. In fact, our guest coming up in just a couple of minutes is Ron Alvarado. He is the president and founder of Nova Staffing Group. And about 20 years ago, he did a projection when he was making a presentation here in Pittsburgh. And the argument that he was making back then was that we have this split between the total number of jobs that are going to be required and the workforce that is eligible to fill those jobs. And in so many ways, it's just about simple demographics. We have the baby boomers that are aging out of the workforce, and those baby boomers, when they had children, they had smaller families, completely different than the baby boomer families. Many of those families, you have mom and dad, and they had 3, 4, 5, and 6 kids. But the reverse has happened, where those baby boomers had 2, sometimes 1, maybe 3, but much smaller families. And so you have a little bit of a flat line, if you will, which means if we're not bringing in more immigrants to handle our labor needs, then we're not going to have a big enough workforce. It's just that simple. And so you have this split that's happening in greater degrees because the baby boomers are aging out of the workforce. You don't have enough younger people. And then in recent years, since 2016, 17 with President Trump, this idea of limiting the number of people coming in. And so we don't have the workforce available. And it's seemingly at every single level, whether we're talking about low-skilled labor and Americans just not willing to do certain jobs. It doesn't make a difference what the pay is. Even if you're offering them $12, $13, $14, $15 an hour, there's just some work they're not going to do. And what you need is immigrant labor that is willing to do that. But at the same time, we need people who are educated, people who are skilled, people who are capable, people who really have the ability to bring something that is a skill set that is required as we move forward with our economy. And a couple of interesting stories. One is you're looking at the unemployment numbers. And according to the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry, June's unemployment rate was at 3.8%. We've not seen numbers this low since 1976. Everybody who can work is working. Now, there are arguments to be made about the people who are not working because daycare is so expensive. Transportation costs can be so expensive. And so families, some of them, learning to live on one income instead of 2 incomes. Not in great numbers, but significant enough. People who would otherwise go and take part-time work saying, no, I'm not going to take that part-time work. I'm going to help with the grandkids. I'm going to help with an aging family member. a parent, a grandparent, because nursing facilities are seeing diminished numbers of people going in too. Well, that doesn't seem to make sense considering the demographics. You would see increasing numbers, but many of them are staying home. Family members providing that care that others would ultimately be providing. So since 1976, we have an unemployment number that we've not seen since then. That's nearly 50 years ago. Last June, the unemployment rate was at 4.3%, a half percentage point above the June 2023 unemployment rate. And the argument is from Ryan Unger. He is the Harrisburg Regional Chamber president. Ryan Unger said it's still a job seeker's market because there's so few people that are unemployed. So as that number gets lower, it continues to be an employee-driven market. So what is with the labor shortage that we're dealing with? We talked a little bit about the demographics, and then we talked about the COVID impact of people wanting to be able to work from home. Some jobs have bounced back pretty quickly, others not so much. We have some sectors where we have a surplus of employees, and in some respects, the construction industry across the country, we have a surplus of employees, but we have a deficit of potential employees when it comes to manufacturing. Interestingly enough, the numbers are pretty consistent when it comes to food service and hospitality. If you go back to the beginnings of COVID in March of 20, Gallup found that 91% of U.S. workers hope they could continue working some of their hours from home, and 3 in 10 workers signaled that they would seek new employment if they were recalled to the office. Think about that one for a second. Employers would love to be able to have the employees back in the office, but people just don't want to go back. And so you're left with two things. Businesses, employers that are wondering, how am I going to best fill these positions that I have available to me? I got to fill these things. How do I best do that? And then on the flip side, you have workers that are wondering, is this a really good time to consider going and looking for something better? And you know what? That's happening. But there's a little bit of a frustration. There are times where people go look for that other work, they find the other jobs, and then there are some surveys that are out saying that many of those individuals left and aren't happy. Did they find the right position? What could they have done differently? What does it take to make sure that you find the right job for yourself? What do you have to have in line in order to do that? And from an employer standpoint, what does it take to get those people? What are the key issues here that need to be addressed? Well, that brings our guest, Ron Alvarado, once again, the president and founder of Nova Staffing Group here in the Pittsburgh region. He's been doing this now for decades. He specializes in professional services, but as you hear him discuss this, it's much more than just that. The lessons that are being taught here, the advice that is being given is something that applies to all business owners, regardless of the skill set that you're looking for, and it applies to all prospective employees, regardless of the work that you're ultimately looking for. Ron Alvarado. Many people don't even think about their resume until and if they have to go find another job.
Right.
That's not what you recommend, is it?
No. So how often do we find people? I haven't written a resume in 20 years, 15 years. That's not uncommon. Resumes are probably one of the hardest things to put together, right? When you have to develop a profile on yourself and your accomplishments. It's not easy. And it's certainly not easy if you're going to wait 15 years to go back then and think about everything that you've done in 15 years. My suggestion to folks who are out there, I do this for my son does it, and every 5 years, what you want to do is you want to renew your resume. You want to put in there highlights. Resumes should not be a copy of your job description. Let me repeat that. A resume should not be a copy of your job description. A resume should be a biography of your accomplishments, the skills you've learned, right? I mean, you want to talk about what you've done, but how well did you do? And we talked about the analogy about the second baseman.
Right.
Second basemen do second base, but what are your accomplishments, right? And then also at that 5-year point, take a look at the marketplace. Maybe work with a recruiter so everything's anonymous, but take a look at the marketplace and see what's out there. You don't have to make a change. Mm-hmm. You can interview, in fact. Just make sure everything is confidential, which it should be. No one should be giving information about who's talking to who. And then and then you're good. You know where you are. you know where you are with your firm, you know where you are with your career, and again, it's not a question of making a change. It's a question of going through the process, because it's going to be easier to do it every 5 years as opposed to doing it, once every 10 years or once every 15 years.
Updating everything. Businesses should be updating their job description. Individuals should be updating their resumes, even if you're not necessarily looking, just making sure that it's completely accurate to what it is either you're looking for from the employer's perspective, or what you're looking for, or what you have to offer, rather,
Right. So
from an employee.
And again, I go back to the analogy, right? So of the baseball player, and if he made the All-Star team like last year or the year before, and at the batting championship, he might forget about that in 10 years because other things may have happened. So you just want to jot down those accomplishments that are critical pieces of your value. This is the value that I've created for my employer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the value that I bring to your organization.
Is this a technique that can be applied for individuals regardless of their professional status?
Meaning?
I mean, we think about people who are white collar and the establishment of their resumes. Do you think that this is a good thing to teach young kids that are working through high school, young kids who are working their way through college, what they've been able to accomplish? Like if the kid starts off as a little trainee and then within 2 years he becomes a shift manager, those things should all be listed, shouldn't they?
Absolutely. And you're right. I mean, we work with C-suite folks, and then we've been doing work with veterans recently. And those are individuals who are going into various positions. It could be security, for example. And so, same thing. We've helped those folks put together a resume that is descriptive, that is easy to read, and that talks about their qualifications for the position. But on the you talked about the companies. The companies should be doing this every week. I mean, I don't put a job description on my site unless it's real and validated and contains all of the. It's just got it's got to be well written. It's just like the resume. Go to my website, novusstaffing.com. Take a look at all my jobs. How beautiful they are. It's beautiful. They're all descriptive. I mean, you find everything you need in there and nothing that you don't need. And that's the way it should be. It should be, because then the candidate can say, okay, I'm qualified.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way we're not taking time with candidates who are not qualified for that role.
Right.
So my internal staff is concentrating on value creating activities. Going through 70 resumes in an hour, I don't know how much value is created by that. I think if you relieve those recruiters of that, automate some of that, then they can focus on being recruiters and not rejectors.
Some people may think, well, if I contact Novus, then it's going to cost me. What's it going to cost me? Right. And why do you go that route if I can go ahead and do this on my own?
There's never a cost to the candidate, right? So the fees are paid by our clients. You're always going to get from us the service that you deserve, right? What does that mean? We're going to give you the time and respect that you deserve, and we'll give you some pointers for free.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, resume revision ideas.
Okay.
Yeah. So, from our perspective, there's never a fee to the candidate. All our fees are paid by the clients. Again, we have contract positions and we have full-time opportunities as well.
What does that mean, contract positions?
It was called temporary staffing when I started. Now it's called contract staffing. I don't know. It's basically a temporary employment opportunity. It could be a week. Most of them are long-term. So companies say, okay, so Ron, find us a recruiter, and that person will be on your payroll for some length of time. And then it's our intent to hire them down the road. Yeah, once we see how they work out, and it might be a economic issue where until I get budget dollars for that position.
Mm-hmm.
So those are contract jobs. The candidate is an employee of Novus Group, and you're assigned our employee is assigned to one of our client companies.
Okay. And so there could be full-time employment that comes as a result of it. And then other people, I'm guessing there may be some people who like the idea of working at one place for 6 months to a year, and then it's on to something else, it's on to somewhere else. And there's just something appealing about that.
Oh, yeah. So when I was in New York City for a brilliant company, and it was founded by two, one was a Broadway actor, the other one was a cellist in like the Philharmonic. And they started the company, and it was basically, and they got a lot of press around this. And so first they waited table, now they do desktop. So they took these actors and actresses who were fantastic, sharp, polished, beautiful, articulate, jovial people, and they would put them into temporary assignments because then they could go and do their auditions at will. So they love that arrangement. We have that. You know, there's people, there might be a spouse whose husband is retired, and she doesn't want to stay at home, and or he doesn't want to stay at home. They want to travel, so you know they'll work for 6 months. They want to get out of the house, do something.
Right.
Yeah, so there's different aspects of why you want to do temporary or contract staffing. For college students, especially if you just graduated, I suggest that you look at a staffing firm as an opportunity to enter the job force, because it's easier through us than directly through the client. And it's a great way to build resume.
And gives you the opportunity, potentially, to try a couple of different things before you lock yourself down to one.
Absolutely. If you see my resume when I started my career, oh, it was awful. I mean, I was doing something different every 7 months, and it was terrible. It's not the good resume. So had I done staffing or been, if I was working for Novus Group and going from one job to the other, I would be employed by Novus Group for a month, a year and a half, but I would have had 5 different experiences at different companies: healthcare, finance, energy. And so it gives an opportunity to try different environments in a different, from a different perspective, right? A different relationship. Not just, it's not, you're not an employee of that company that we're sending you to. You're an employee of Nova. So you get a chance to bounce around and take a look at different environments.
Let me give you an opportunity at some final thoughts, talking to both employers and to prospective employees, people who are out there looking. Final thoughts to both of them.
For employees looking, remember, go back to your resume and take the time to make sure that it's not a job description. You want to have some job description items, right? What you did, but you want to talk about how well you did them, what kind of awards you received, if any, commendations. What did you do? Did you increase productivity? How much? So you want to really put numbers and stats onto that resume. Make sure it reads well, and please spell check it. I'm not going to talk about what I recently saw, but it was someone that meant to write public, and they left out the L. I mean that. So you got to be careful. Don't send that out. Yeah. Make sure you spell check it, because that's one of the things that I'm a stickler on. If you can't spend the time spell checking your resume and sending me something, I'm not looking at it. Because if you don't care, I'm not going to care. I'm going on to the next one. Make sure your resume is well put together. Make sure you spell check it, and that it has accomplishments, not only job duties. For employers, I talked about it. I think I would urge you to make sure that when you're posting positions, that those positions are accurate, that it contains all of the essential skills and responsibilities on that job opportunity, that it's not over-credentialed. I mean, think about whether you do need a bachelor's degree, or will 20 years of experience supersede it. Think about that. Will someone with 20 years experience perform at a different level than someone with a bachelor's degree in 5 years? I don't know. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, take a look at your database. Right? If you're an employer, so if I'm a vice president of human resources of a company, I know how much we spent. I can go back 10 years and I'll tell you how much. I can tell you from my company how much we spent on advertising to build that database. I can tell you how many candidates are in there. So why not use that as a pool, as your first source of candidates? But it has to be cleaned up, right?
Right.
We talked about those spices.
Right.
If you create talent communities and talent pools, and call us if you need help, because we can help you do that. Creating talent pools for accounting, for IT, for human resources, for sales. Create these talent pools. Nurture those pools, because right now they're just sitting down there, right? Nobody's talked to them in a while. Nurture them. Send them information, right?
Right.
There's technology that helps you do it. Send them information about your company, what you're doing. And more importantly, anytime a position comes up that's in that field, those folks get it. So you're not spamming them. You're basically doing this very strategically, You don't want to over-communicate. Just send information that you feel that these folks would be interested in, particularly your job openings. And so just by doing that, I think you'll get a good ROI, you get a good response, and then you'll be able to manage those pools effectively because now you have them really sorted well, just like those spices. You don't have to go out to Giant Eagle and buy oregano when it's in your spice rack and you can't find it.
Ron Alvarado with us. He is the president and founder of Nova Staffing Group, talking about employment in Pennsylvania, especially here in Pittsburgh. I want to thank you all for listening to the show. Please be sure to click the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. For more on me and the show, be sure to visit ManginoTalks.com. If there's a topic that you would like me to talk about or a guest that you would like me to have on, send me an email, Mangino@ManginoTalks.com. Follow me on your favorite social media platform by using @ManginoTalks. And then once you find me, please like, follow, subscribe, and share the pages with your friends and your family. And thanks again for listening to the Mangino Talks podcast.
You can take away